I don't care if I cut your head off. We're more interested in the information than the... Okay, I'm sitting here with Bill Buppert. And yeah, either way is fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna edit this like crazy, so
Okay.
actually, and I'm gonna send it to you before I publish it.
Super.
Bill is a blogger, champion of freedom, former Army intelligence officer, and now private contractor.
Now I'm a private contractor working for DOD.
So I'm guessing you probably have a insight into the way the military works that I just will never have.
Only because of saturation in it and having worked there most of my adult life.
Right.
So, yeah.
Has it made you jaded about the military? Or?
Oh, very much so. I'm very cynical about it. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think it's interesting. During the first Clinton administration, there were times when they would be very vicious towards the uniformed military who was there at their cabinet meetings, at their situation room meetings, things like that.
Yeah, I think Hillary is legendary for the way she treated her
absolutely.
Marines and her guards.
She was awful about it.
Yeah.
But what they didn't realize is that the most dovish and peaceful advisors and counsel that they had were the military, because they're the ones who actually have to bleed, they're the ones who actually have to write the letters, they're the ones who actually have to do the hard work involved in maintaining this horrendous and horrific empire that we've had around the world since 1898.
So I consider you, I mean this is such a overused word, but I guess I would consider you a survivalist or a
Preparedness.
A preparedness specialist or a
And you know
expert?
the reason I say preparedness is because survivalist has so much negative baggage attached to it now.
It's almost like militia. Or,
It's almost like racist. It's almost like constitutional or unconstitutional. They've lost all their descriptive value. So when you say that, what does that mean? And one can spend hours trying to debate the precise meaning of that. So preparing for worst case scenarios.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think that in the 80s there was a big uprising of freedom type movements, a lot of militias, a lot of backlash against rapidly growing federal government. There was some crackdowns. I was in Italy at the time. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was very young. And people, I was a LDS missionary during Waco, and people asked me if I was a member of that cult where everybody died, and LDS missionaries aren't allowed to watch the news. You know, it's like 2 years of blissful ignorance. It was beautiful, you know. And I had no idea what they were talking about. That's the only thing I knew about Waco. I didn't find out really about Waco until a couple years ago. I just saw this movie, Waco: The Rules of Engagement, which is an incredibly damning portrayal of the way it went down. The evidence to me was so overwhelming against the federal government and the way they handled it. And also we had Ruby Ridge, and we had some machine gun laws that came out under, was it Reagan or George Bush Sr.? Well,
1986 there was the McClure-Volkmer Act, which essentially made the manufacture of new machine guns after that time much more restrictive. And then with the assault weapons ban in 1994, made it even worse under Clinton. And the ATF is always tooling and retooling their language to make it more and more difficult for us to acquire both machine guns and cosmetically offensive weapons.
Right. I'm well familiar with that because I'm a little bit of a Class 3 guy, and wow, the hoops to get
the paperwork.
To get a muffler.
I wouldn't do it myself.
Well, I guess my tactical mindset almost requires it. You know, and I'm a huge fan of suppressors. But and that's a whole different story. I don't want to talk about what I'm interested in. I want to talk about what you're interested in. I was going to ask you about, I've heard basically a lot of prophecies, and I worry about that, the cry wolf thing. I worry about that with my friends and family. I think they feel like a little bit too extreme, and I feel like they're a little bit too lax.
Sure.
They're not scared enough, and maybe I'm too scared, whatever, about the way things are going down. Do you worry about that, like the militia movements and the survivalists, people who lost their credibility in the 80s and 90s because what they predicted didn't happen the way they predicted it? Do you worry about the crying wolf type of thing where people are 10 years from now say, you know what, it didn't happen the way you said it was going to happen? Do you worry about losing credibility that way?
I don't, because that would only be relevant if you were in the business of making prophecies and making a profit by it, making money doing it. You know, most of us who are around here are prognosticators who do this, much like I do other things, as a volunteer effort.
Right.
You know, I find it interesting where the trend is in the opposite direction, where for your church, for instance, in LDS, you've probably seen over the entire time you've been a member of that church, they've keep on ratcheting back the amount of food that they require you. And I know how the requirement works in LDS. It's a gentle nudging.
Yeah.
But they keep rationing it back. I think it's down to 6 weeks.
3 months.
Used to be 2 years.
1 year.
Okay.
Well, actually, Brigham Young, who was, I guess, the second leader, he wanted 7 years.
No, okay. It's a biblical number.
Well, and it would be great, 7.
It would be.
And it's actually not that hard to do, pennies on for pennies you can put it together, but
I can sum up the preparedness movement, though, in just one sentence, and that's that you can acquire all the materiel and weapons and food and everything that you want. You can fill up a room the size of the one that we're in right now, which is a fairly considerable sized ballroom. But if you don't know the first thing about manipulating it, using it, nurturing it, and making more, it's all for naught.
Right.
You'll mismanage it in some fashion.
You can't throw money at it. You have to
you can't throw money.
Time at it.
You have to throw time at it. I think that's well put. And I think that we've made homeschooling in my life a lifestyle choice. You make preparedness a lifestyle choice.
Right.
You're not involved in trying to overthrow the government or rebel against the government or complain about how bad things are going to be, because I've told my friends, let's suppose you put aside a year's worth of groceries. Whoever you listen to who recommends you do that, and you act on that, and then the next year, nothing happens. Then the next year, nothing happens. If you pay attention to your expiration dates, all you've done is purchased groceries and paid it forward. That's all you've done. You have nothing to lose to be prepared, and I think that it is your duty and obligation, in my case, in your case, as a husband and a father, to look after my family. And one of those things I must provide for them, of course, is the ability to live well even in times of crisis.
Or live at all. I think that
or
it
live
could
at
come
all.
down
Yep.
to.
Absolutely.
I think it was, he's famous, but I can't remember his name, Stefan Molyneux.
Yeah.
He had maybe at the Freedom Summit, I would say him as more of an optimistic outlook on things. I noticed kind of a contradiction in what he said, though, and I wanted to ask you about that. He said, hey, have you ever seen a body of a dead Iraqi on national TV? And I think we did see that with the machine gun, the Apache helicopters.
Well, thanks to Assange, yes.
Right. And I know you did a blog about that.
Yeah.
To me, that was a incredibly impactful event to see. But that is a rarity, I admit. What he said is true, that you don't see very many dead civilians. I think we're up to 60 or 70,000 dead civilians is what has been admitted to.
It's hard to come up with a solid number, though.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's always been that way. Like, you got to round off to the nearest, I think they say, 40 or...
one maimed or killed woman or child or innocent male or man over there is too much.
Right.
Because in the end, what have we achieved besides making the entire world enraged at our behavior?
There's a, what's his name? Joel Skousen, he theorizes that there's I guess the powers that be, or whoever you want to call them, are trying to make us out to be a villain for whatever nefarious reasons. And they do that through pushing us into war after war after war, and convincing us that those wars are, I'm fighting for freedom over there. There's a lot of people who still believe that we're fighting for freedom.
I can't buy into any conspiratorial viewpoints of an elite that manipulates and